everyone, to Her Story Podcast. Today I have Lauren on the show. Lauren, thank you so much for being here with me.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And could you go ahead and tell us about yourself?
Yeah. I'm Lauren Wittenberg-Weiner. I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because I was sitting in my dream job in the White House, right, and loving my life, working as a policy wonk, and found myself in Italy on military orders with my brand new husband. We had 4 days to get married and sell the house and, quit my dream job. And I found out when I got there that there was what they said was a policy on base that military spouses couldn't work at the professional level. And I didn't do well with that. So I started a company.
Especially coming from the White House.
Yeah, I jokingly said the other day, when I got married at the Justice of the Peace, I signed on for better or for worse, but I didn't sign on to not having a career. And I didn't know that was what I was doing. So I incorporated a company just to get myself back to kind of the career until I could get home to DC. And my eventual business partner at the time, just good friend who was a corporate lawyer, incorporated the company for me. We came up with the company name. It was Wittenberg-Weiner Consulting. And it was because my maiden name was Wittenberg. My married name was Weiner. So everyone in DC knew me as Wittenberg. Everyone in Naples knew me as Weiner. And it sounded bigger than just one person. And so that's what we used. Eventually we ended up becoming WWC, and then WWC Global, because there was an extra business partner there and she wasn't reflected in the first name. But we started the company literally just for me to get some piecework back and forth to the States.
Wow.
And instead, we ended up growing from 1.5 of us to a bunch of military spouses, 15 over the first 2 years, I think we were. And then we got a little bit more strategic and grew, and we ended up eventually at about $100 million in annual revenue before we sold in 2022.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what started as just, I need some job.
Just give me something to do.
I need something to do.
House.
I'm bored.
Yes.
I'm in Italy with my husband,
Yes.
which turned into this huge company. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
It really goes to show what a little motivation can do. It can just really blow up without you even knowing that was where it was going to go.
Yeah, for sure.
And you describe yourself as an accidental entrepreneur. Can you elaborate on what that means?
Yeah, you know what? Even at the beginning, it was, oops, I started a company. I didn't really think about doing that. It just kind of happened. But even along the way, I mean, we were very strategic and thoughtful, but I was not the typical entrepreneur, right? I did everything differently than people told me to do. And not
Unruly.
everything. What's that?
You were unruly.
I was totally unruly. This is where it came from, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't call it that back in the day. We just knew that I used to call it the MBA playbook, right? I didn't want to do things the way everyone else did things because it didn't seem, there were plenty of things that seemed standard and normal and right, and we played by the MBA playbook most of the time. But there were things that I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why couldn't we do it this way? So, military spouses and using military spouses at the professional levels was the first thing that we did that was entirely unruly or, accidental in the way that we did things that was different than everyone else did. And it worked.
Yeah.
Right? And it was the distinguisher that made us dramatically more successful. And so at each turn as we got through this, it was one of these things where I was like, why can't we do it this way? Right? Why wouldn't we do it this way? And so, and at every turn, I will tell you, everyone told us we were wrong, we were stupid, we were crazy, we had no idea what we were doing.
Yep.
Those chicks have no clue, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And inevitably, the people who were telling us that, on the metrics they cared about, we beat them. But on the metrics we cared about, we really beat them because we were doing things that we wanted to do the way we wanted to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I know you said you were met with some criticism,
Oh my gosh.
a lot of criticism.
Yes.
criticism. And was it different criticism coming from men, and was it both genders that were criticizing you? Was it different criticism
I think it was
from...
probably different criticism. I think there were a whole lot of the more traditional entrepreneurs, and those tend to be white men, right? Because that's who has traditionally been successful, particularly in the military contracting space.
Yep, of course.
So I had a whole lot of mentors that were men and a whole lot of mentors, but most of those mentors were minority of some stripe or another that were willing to kind of say, oh, I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Huh, that's really interesting. Have you thought about this, or did you do this, or whatever? So they weren't yes men, but they were interested and open to the idea of doing things differently. I think a lot of the people that we heard from that they were like, this just doesn't make any sense. What the heck are you doing? Were more traditional entrepreneurs, government employees, whatever. And a lot of those, were probably white men.
Yeah, interesting. And can you walk me through some of the challenges or emotions with those early stages? What obstacles really stood out to you, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, I think our first big obstacle when we got we got a contract. We had an awful customer who tried to make me cry. And he told me, I don't understand why I couldn't make you cry. You're the only girl I've never been able to make cry.
Wow,
and I was like,
that's awful.
Why would you try to make a girl? First of all, I'm not a girl. I haven't been a girl for 15 years at this point. But why would you try to make a girl cry? And then the thing that came out of my mouth, because I tend to be a little bit irreverent, is if that was you trying to make me cry, you're an amateur.
I love that.
And he kind of stopped it. I was
That's
like,
intimidating
right?
from you.
And so, that was one of our first challenges. But from that he was like, I'm going to take your contract away from you.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, then take my contract. Like, okay, then I won't work for a little while and I'll go back to the States. No big deal.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I need you to move back to the States. And I was like, look, sir, if I was going to move back to the States, it would be for one of the 3 SES positions, the very senior level positions in the government that I have on the table right now, which was much higher than the level that he was at as a government employee.
Oh, wow.
And so he kind of, again,
Backed off a little
bit, got intimidated, and was like, wait a second, I'm dealing with somebody a little different than I thought I was dealing with. So that was one of our first challenges. But from that, he first said he was going to take the contract away from us. By the end of the hour that I was in the room with him, he was like, never mind, I'm not going to take the contract. I'm going to increase it by 3 people. But you're going to have to find those 3 people right now.
Wow.
And I was like, is this a bad thing? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Are you punishing me by giving me extra positions? So we were able, he wanted somebody in Naples, somebody in Bahrain. And by the next morning, I had 2 resumes for him. And I think he was looking for me to fail. Yeah. And we didn't.
Wow.
Right? We were able to, because I had a great network of people. I was able to make calls through the night, and it was Europe, so they were already awake. Yeah. So I was able to get everything done and hand him 2 resumes the next morning. And that really kicked us off from a little tiny firm that we weren't sure where we were going to go, to here's another contract, and then another contract came, and then another contract came, and we built from there. So I think those first things where people were trying to intimidate us, the first things where, when we grew so much over the course of a couple of days, trying to make payroll the first time from there was terrifying. Yeah. And we kept so much working capital for the rest of the life of the firm, because that one day that I thought, oh my gosh, do I have enough in my 401k to liquidate and pay salaries if I need to? So those were the things early on that were just terrifying. Yeah. But when you faced them head on, when you realized they weren't as bad as you thought they were going to be, and that you would get through them and you'd make mistakes, and it was okay to make mistakes, and none of them were catastrophic because you could always walk it back and figure something else out, that really kind of gave me the confidence to keep going and keep growing as we went.
Yeah. And do you still keep in contact with this gentleman? Do you say, have you ever gone back and said thank you?
This is kind of funny. This is actually really funny. So my chief growth officer came to me years later. And this guy had actually left the government and started his own firm. He's going to end up watching this, by the way. And it's going to be like, hi, Chris.
Hi. Yeah.
So he ended up starting his own firm. And I heard he said to somebody, if Lauren can do it as well as she can, I'm smarter than her, so I could do it. Great. Go ahead. My chief growth officer came to me years later, and he was like, hey, boss, they want to do business with us. They want to subcontract to us. They're bringing it. I was like, keep him away from me and keep him away from the women in the firm. But if you want to do business with them, you manage it. That's fine. So we did. So it was great.
So
I was
funny.
like, you know what? That's fine. But I want to make sure that he doesn't have the opportunity to be a jerk to the young women that work for me, because clearly he had a problem with young women.
Yeah.
So we managed it, and we were fine, and he was never around.
Wow. Yeah. I love that you protected the women and that you're professional. Like, you weren't petty. You weren't like, no one's working with him that I know.
Right.
Like, you can't be friends with him. You can't talk to him. Like, you were completely professional despite what had happened in the past. And you were just like, just make sure people are safe. And do what you need to do.
His staff was great. I just wasn't going to work with him, and I wasn't going to let him.
And that's more than fair. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little more about sexism in the government contracting industry, especially in those early days? Because, I mean, I worked as a government contractor, but only in the past 8 years. So it's like fairly new. But I know things were different back then. So from now. So go ahead and share a little bit about that.
They were a lot different. I will tell you, I was talking about this the other day. The first industry conference here in Tampa for SOCOM, which is at that point was called SOFIC, and now it's SOF Week. I went in. It was a much smaller conference back then, right? It was at the convention center, but it was only at the convention center. There was a big floor with all the booths and stuff, and it's a SOCOM industry conference, right? So there's a bunch of heavy metal firms there. There's a bunch of guns and ammo and like cool toys.
Yeah.
The rumor was, and I don't know if this was true or not, but the rumor was that one of the guys who had invested in a lot of the firms that did some of the cool toys also owned a lot of the clubs on Dale Mabry Highway that have young women working there. And I'm walking around in a power suit, right? I'm walking around probably in a black suit, knowing me, that was, very conservative with very low heels and very light makeup. And I was young, probably mid-30s at that point. And I'm walking around, and I am the only woman in the entire convention center who is fully dressed.
Wow.
Everyone else had bikinis on.
What? And this is at?
They were booth babes. Right? This is back in the day.
SOF Week?
Oh, yeah.
What? I've never heard of this.
There were no other women. It was me. It was Lori Larson.
Oh, my gosh. This is interesting.
That I'm calling her out. But there were like maybe 5 of us. In fact, I could probably name all 5 of us that were there at that point. And it was very much, who the heck are these, they were perfectly comfortable with the booth babes.
Yeah.
But they didn't know what to make of us.
Yeah.
And so, it has changed dramatically over the years. I mean, we started, Janelle started Women in Defense with a bunch of other people 15 years ago now. And it was, it was very much started to be accepted at that point. And it's really grown over the years. And I've seen young women come in that have no idea what it felt like to be there. And it, not saying, I'm so glad that it is much more comfortable now. Yeah. It's not great yet. It's not entirely perfect.
Yeah.
Right. I had, even 5, 6, 7 years ago, people saying when we got our big contract at SOCOM, who are these chicks and who do they think they are? And they don't know what they're doing, and they don't. One of the protests had reference to the fact that the only reason we got it was because I was married to the acquisition executive, which I was not married to the acquisition executive. Right?
That's only how you got where you were. Is
right,
through
exactly.
marriage.
I slept my way to the top.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So there was still a lot of that, even more recently, but it was much more egregious. I remember one meeting where somebody said, "Oh, let's go to the strip club." "Oh, we can't because the chick is here." And I was like, "I'll go to the strip club with you." Let's go. And they didn't. And I knew they weren't going to. But I was like, but you had to play the game in ways.
You're in the good old boys club.
Yeah. And you know what? I called their bluff a lot. Right? The same way that I did with the guy who was like, I couldn't make you cry. I was like, okay, what would you like? There's nothing I can't do. I mean, look, I am not a door kicker.
Yeah.
Right? And I've said that from the outset, and I've never tried to be, and I've never tried to act like I am. Right? I was never in the military. I couldn't kick a door down if I tried. I am horribly unathletic. I am a terrible shot. Right? That's not who I am. But I'm a darn good leader who knows how to run a great company. And if I presented myself as that and somebody didn't like it, too bad. But that's what I am.
Yeah.
So as long as I presented myself authentically, it seemed to work. And when it didn't, I could manage around it.
Yeah. Did you ever come across women who are trying to make it in the industry who weren't trying to be authentic? They're trying to play, like, try to just fit in.
Totally.
Pretend they're a door kicker. Right. And maybe explain what that is to the audience.
Yeah,
well, yeah,
that's fair. So there are two phrases that I think most often come along with a military operator, kind of the special operators that are, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Delta, all the kind of elite special operators. They call them door kickers, which is really because they go in and kick down doors to get into to breach, an apartment or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they call them snake eaters. I am neither. Right. I saw a lot of women do two things back in the day. I think it's changed a lot. They tried to be the good old boys. They tried to do and I did a little bit of that, like, in the fact that, like, I would dial up my swearing. Right? I swear. I am not as couth as I probably should be, but I dialed up my swearing to kind of shock them a little bit and make sure that they knew I was safe for them.
For them to be themselves, yeah.
But it was still fairly authentic to me because I'm not good at not swearing anyway. So I just wasn't as filtered. But I saw a lot of them really either try to be extremely feminine because that was what they were comfortable with. Yeah. And so there was a whole lot of, back in Tampa particularly, in the kind of mid-2000s, even like the 2010, 2015 era, lots of women who wore, like, lots of makeup, really high heels, but then also kind of played in that space, or to the other extreme of, like, yeah, I'm a badass, I'm a door kicker. And so, but I think it became much more comfortable in, like, 2012, 2013-ish. I started seeing women kind of calm down a little bit. Yeah. Start appearing more as themselves and not as these archetypes of what they think they're supposed to be. And I think that helped a lot, and it made it much more comfortable for everyone to be like, okay, we're all here together. It's good. We're fine. I also think that the younger generation coming up just didn't care. Like, they were like, okay, women are my equal, right? The kind of old guard retired. They got into the government contracting world, and so the government contracting world was still a little more problematic than the actual military and government service guys because they were younger. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I could definitely see that for sure because I'm in the military and I'm in government contracting as well, so I've seen both sides of it. But again, only in the last 10 years, the last decade.
I feel like the military has gotten. It took longer than it did in the non-DoD world, I think, to kind of catch up. But it kind of caught up, and the guys that are now, mid-grade officers were like, "What? Shut up about the women. Like, they're just as good as we are. Like, I don't care." Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I love that I personally, like, I'm an example of the younger women coming into the industry. I've never really had to deal with that. Like,
That's awesome.
You saying there were, like, the
booth babes.
Booth babes at Soft Week, like, that is just, like, so unheard of for me. That is so funny.
That makes me happy.
I'm going to have to look this up.
That makes me happy that you're, like, shocked by that.
Yeah.
Because I walked in and I was like, yeah, all right. Okay. This is what we're dealing with.
Oh,
the great thing was at least the lines for the bathroom for the first
short.
time were short.
Yeah.
And the men were like spilling out of the bathroom in line. It was great.
I like how you see the silver lining.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there was no bathroom line for the women.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to pivot a little bit to your book,
Yes.
Unruly, which is, it just came out recently, right?
July 1st.
July 1st it came out. Can you share with the audience a little bit about this book?
Yeah. So we sold the company in 2022. And as I was kind of transitioning from the CEO role to more of an advisory role, it's very hard to be in your old company and not the CEO. And I'm not terribly good at being quiet. And I had to be, and I needed to be, and it was the right thing for me to be quiet and let the new CEO really take the reins, which he did a great job doing. But I had so many things that were in my head, and I didn't want them to come out of my mouth, so I put them on paper instead. And it really, honestly, at first it was more therapeutic for me, like, how did we get here, right? How did we do this? And I just kind of started throwing it on paper. And then I talk in the book a lot about my cousin, who was my best friend growing up, had brain cancer, and his cancer came back 5 days after we sold the company.
Oh, wow.
And so the last 4 months of his life were just after I had sold the company, and I was back and forth, and I was watching him as he passed, and I got this like idea that this is something that's meaningful. I don't have all the time in the world. I kind of have always wanted to write a book, and so when Jamie passed, I was like, maybe this is actually a book. Maybe. And so I called Stan McChrystal, who ended up writing the foreword to my book, and I said, sir, I think I have a book in me. Am I crazy? And his response was, we know you're crazy. Thank you, sir. But yes, you have a book in you, and you are going to love every minute of writing this book, and you are going to hate every minute of publicizing this book, which is entirely true. And he was like, go ahead and write it. And he kind of walked me through how he had done his, at that point, 4, now 5 New York Times bestselling books. So I just put a proposal together and threw it in and to see what happened. Realized I didn't know this game at all.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting an editor, figured this out, ended up writing this book, and it really was this idea of how did we get here? Like, how did we do this well? Because everyone thought we were crazy, right? Everyone thought we were going to fail at every turn. Every time we did something, people were like, those chicks don't know what they're doing, right? And what the heck are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're crazy. You're not going to get anywhere. That's going to fail. And every time, and we didn't succeed every time, I want to be really clear.
Yeah.
But we did succeed beyond my expectations ever, beyond anyone else's expectations. And so I felt like, how did we do that? And I kind of came around, there was a lot of stuff that we had said over the years that we had kind of taught our staff, our team. And as I was looking around what all these pieces were, the concept of unruly, that we knew the rules better than anyone else, that we challenged the rules when it made sense to do so, and then we became advocates. We changed the rules both for ourselves and for other people, both the written and the unwritten rules, the written rules of like actual, law and regulation, but also the unwritten rules and the expectations about how the game really gets played. When it stopped serving us or the broader society, we would figure out how to make those changes for us or for broader society. So those are the 3 parts of Unruly, is just know the rules, challenge the rules, change the rules, and then everything. And it's not just for business, but really for life overall. And so that's where the book came from. We put it out into the world July 1st. It is officially a USA Today bestseller, number 7 on the bestseller list, and Portlight best business book for July and all sorts of like great accolades but really more so than that, it's these conversations that I get to have with people in different phases of life, in different industries, in different places, and really how this concept might help them break free from the expectations and from the path that they thought they were supposed to be on, and find their own authentic path to breakout success. And so that's what the book's about.
Yeah, I love that. And when you were writing this book, I'm sure there's a lot of reflection that you had to do on your own life. And you're like, how did this happen? How did I get here?
Yeah.
And then you write it out. Did you have any wow moments, like looking back on how your journey went? And
So it's funny. I am terrible at celebrating wins. We always have been. I always have been. The team kind of always has been. I've always been one to turn around and be like, okay, we got there. What's next? What's the next mountain? What's the next mountain? What's the next mountain? And I think this was a really great way of stopping and taking stock and going, we actually, because at every turn when we got from, 15 million to 50 million overnight when we got the big contract at SOCOM, I was so petrified. They called us on a Friday afternoon. I don't think I slept that night. Waited until I don't even think it was a reasonable time. At 2:00 in the morning, I got up and I started whiteboarding. And then I called a friend of mine to help me write the press release the next morning. And whatever. It was oh my gosh, how did we get here? Run, 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 chase, chase, chase. And so I never took the time to actually celebrate that win. And then, we won another $200 million the next year in new awards. And again, it was just run, 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 chase, chase, chase. Let's figure this out. How do we do this? And then, the sale, but Jamie got sick. And so there was never a time that I was able to just stop and turn around and be like, we got here.
Yeah.
And so putting all of this together, I think more so than anything, it wasn't any specific aha moment, but it was like, okay, we really did build something different here. And it was really cool to take stock and say, how did we get here? And it wasn't me. I mean, I get to be the face of this, and I've been thrilled to be the face of this for 20-some years at this point, but it wasn't me. It more so than anything, it was I chose the right people and then got out of their way. And then I set some of the parameters and the guidelines and the strategic vision. But that strategic vision was so different than anyone else. So that was the part that I got to stop and take stock and be like, yeah, we did do this differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we got this done. And everyone said we were wrong, and that's the wrong actually became the right, which is cool.
I love your story of just proving everyone wrong.
Yeah.
You weren't even trying. It just happened organically with your personality. You're like, I'm going to do it anyway. And you succeeded. And in writing this book, is there anything that, you really enjoyed writing about or didn't enjoy writing about? That any chapters where you're like, yeah, this was like...
there's a bunch of chapters I like, but there's one chapter that I think is my favorite, or at least my favorite right now, which is Don't Climb Every Mountain. And it was the chapter that kind of sets you free from being on the path that has been a successful path for you. And so it was the story of when we decided to sell, or when I decided that I was ready to sell at least, and how we made it through that, but also how I ended up leaving academia in the first place to go to the White House, and all of the times that I've pivoted in my life and kind of how you do that. So I think that was one of my favorite kind of pieces, or my aha moments, was just like it was coalescing this idea of you don't have to follow the path even once you've put yourself on that path and you're successful. And it's come back to me, funny enough, after the book was written and after we came out with the book. We had just made the bestseller list. Right, so a couple of weeks after the book comes out, we get the bestseller list, and I'm number 7 on the bestseller list for USA Today, and I'm number 2 on the business bestseller list, and I'm here, there, and everywhere, and it's great. And my editor called me, and she goes, "Okay, now that you made the bestseller list, here's the next thing that you have to do in it. You have to do it. There's no choice, or you won't, or you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Right? And meanwhile, my mom is actually in the final stages of late stage Alzheimer's. She passed away in August.
I'm sorry.
And we, I stopped and I was like, okay, I have to do this. This is the next stage. This is the next phase. We need to sell this many books by December 31st. And how are we going to do? And then I stopped myself and I was like, okay, hold on. I have to unruly myself. Because as much as I might want this next phase, or maybe not, because I don't know that I really care about selling a second book or, getting a book published with a whatever. If I don't, first of all, I don't know if I care about that. But even if I do, it's not my priority right now because my mom has to be my priority and my kids have to be my priority as their grandmother dies. And I'm not going to be able to do this and keep sane. So stop. And so I literally took the lessons from the book and reapplied them to myself because I forgot the lessons from the book. So that was kind of a cool moment to be like, right, this book actually does help even me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And can you touch on what you call the panini generation?
Yeah. So I have been hearing for years about the sandwich generation, right? Which is basically you've got a piece of bread, which is your kids. You're the sandwich meat in the middle, and your parents are over the top. And so you're sandwiched between these two generations, and it's really uncomfortable. Having lived in Italy for 4 years, it seemed to me, now being part of this sandwich generation where I've got my parents, because my dad is still with us, but has some health challenges. I've got teenagers, and I've got all these things coming from all different sides, right? It doesn't feel so much like a sandwich. It feels like an actual panini press where there's like high heat and pressure that changes the entire makeup of the sandwich. It doesn't feel like a sandwich anymore. It feels like something totally different. And it's coming, unfortunately, from not just top and on bottom, but all sides. It's like a 7D panini press, not even a 3 or 4D panini press. So there is a huge challenge that I'm seeing among most of my friends right now of a certain generation. We're all Gen X and we're all solidly in the middle of this and complaining to each other. And so stopping and looking about what matters most, and I call it in the book ruthless curation of your priorities. And you've got to be super ruthless about what matters and not big things. I always hear these, what are rubber balls and what are glass balls as the kind of metaphor of how do you balance this stuff. And everyone ends up saying, my kids are glass balls. I can't drop anything about my kids. I think it's more granular than that, right? I think, yes, your kids are glass balls, but not every single thing about your kids is a glass ball, right? And so I tell this story of when my kids were little, and they would have these spirit weeks at school, right? And for those who have little kids, they'll kind of know what I'm talking about. You would have to dress them in a different costume every day for the spirit week. So there's a theme every day. I was terrible at this, right? I would forget every day until the morning of, and I'd be like, oh, shoot, what's the theme now? Like, what am I supposed to, it's Cowboy Day? Well, here's a ball cap. Maybe that's close enough, right? Don't care. And there were other moms that would have these elaborate costumes. They would go 6 months in advance. They would know what the theme of the week would be, and they would buy these costumes that were designer clothes that were fully matched, head to toe. These kids were. That was never going to be my priority. Couldn't be, right? Even if I wanted it to be, it couldn't be, and it wasn't. But I had to curate those priorities. First of all, my kids are fine. They're teenagers now. They don't remember Spirit Week. They don't care. And now they'll do their own Spirit Weeks, which is great. And half the time they don't care about it either. But I had to remind myself when I'm looking at Instagram or Facebook and these kids with these adorable costumes pop up, and I would be like, oh, I'm a terrible mother. No, I've ruthlessly curated my priorities, and I've decided that this isn't a priority for me. Doesn't mean that it shouldn't be a priority for the other mom, by the way. And there's nothing wrong with that mom for having that priority. But I have to own my priorities, and I have to curate them. And some of them, I might want them to be my priority, right? But it's not going to happen because I only have so much time and space and energy. And so if we can ruthlessly curate those priorities, that becomes as important. And that's how you get to, there's no work-life balance, right? By the way, I hate the term, but I talk about work-life equilibrium where things are kind of moving back and forth, and it's never stasis. It's always dynamic, and that's good, right? And so you end up managing those priorities up and down as you see them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you talk about priorities, and you touched on a little bit being a mom, and you were a successful businesswoman, and you had kids and other responsibilities and things of that nature. What do you say to people who are like, you have to choose between having kids and being a good mom or having a career, and there's no in between? It's like two extremes.
You know what? Look,
because that's a big talking point now.
This whole trad wife thing versus that. Stop. Like, I think it's really great for people in power to pit us against each other so that we're fighting each other and not noticing what they're doing, right? And so there's nothing wrong with staying at home. There's nothing wrong with staying at work. My daughter would kill me if she ever saw the podcast, by the way, but she at one point turned to me and she goes, "You let somebody else raise me. You ruined me. Like, I'm a whatever." And I looked at her and I said, "Okay, sweetheart, would you have rather me, because this is the mom you got, would you have rather me funnel all of the energy that I funneled into the company into you?" And she just stopped and like wide-eyed. She was like, "Oh, that would have been terrible," right?
Helicopter mom.
I was like, that's not good, right?
Yeah.
And so I was there. And look, I had the flexibility being a business owner to be able to manage my schedule a whole lot more than some people could. And so I was there. I got to be there for their hockey tournaments. I got to be there for, their dance recitals and when they were in the threes class in nursery school. Those were all things that I got to do, but there were trade-offs, of course. This whole pitting, and the mommy wars have been going on forever, right?
Sure.
So it's not new, it's just repackaged. But I think they benefit not the moms, not the families, but I think they benefit the people in charge who are like, look over here so that you don't see us doing all the really bad stuff, right? And so you go, trad wife, you go against the working mom. Working mom, you go against the wife that's staying home. There's nothing, thank God for my stay-at-home moms that I'm friends with, because they were the ones, by the way, in the Spirit Week who would probably bring costumes because they knew I would forget them and they would just get an extra one. Yeah. Right? So I loved being friends with stay-at-home moms. I loved being friends with powerful women who had careers, powerful careers outside of motherhood. There's nothing different about it. We just have slightly different priorities, but we're all trying to do the same darn thing, which is raise good human beings, hopefully. And that's really hard. Yeah. No matter what you do, it's really hard, particularly when they become teenagers.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So,
yeah, I mean, everybody's going to fail and learn from it and, get better at it. But, I think that's really good advice about the stay-at-home working mom and all that, because, like you said, the big divide is what's really big in the media right now, and there might be other reasons for that.
It's been there forever. Like, I saw this with my mom. I saw this when I was young and had kids. I see it now with my friends who are younger and have kids. There's no reason for us to be fighting each other. The system doesn't work right now, and it makes it really, really hard, and we need to figure it out together.
Yeah, I agree. And also in your book, you touch a little bit on the imposter syndrome, which I identify with because I've struggled with that in my own life after reading what you wrote about it. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what the imposter syndrome is?
Yeah. So imposter syndrome is this concept that women, and it turns out to be a fairly large subset of women, but not all women, that are incredibly successful, but feel like somebody is going to discover that they didn't actually deserve that, that somehow they're an imposter. And I joke in the book, I talk about this time when I was in graduate school, and the woman who coined the imposter syndrome came to Dartmouth to speak to the psychology department. And I'm the only woman in the room, or one of the only women in the room. I'm the youngest person in the room. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to figure out that she's talking about me, but I'm actually the imposter. Not that I deserve to be here and I feel like an imposter, but I'm actually the imposter. I totally missed the point of this entire talk, right? And I missed it for years thereafter. But then you start realizing that a whole lot of the people who don't suffer from the imposter syndrome, they make other people suffer for the fact that they don't have it. Right? They're blowhards, they're big egos, or they're really fragile egos who don't have enough introspection to actually realize that they're suffering from the imposter syndrome. And so I fully believe that if you feel the imposter syndrome, not suffer from it, but feel it, it's a great signal that you need more information. It's a great signal that you're uncomfortable with something, and so you need to seek out something to make sure that you have all of the pieces you need. But if you're not feeling it sometimes, there's three things that happen. There's three things that might mean that you're not feeling it. One of them is you're not pushing out of your comfort zone. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes you can sit in your comfort zone, but you're not growing if you're not doing that. You are naive or silly enough to think that you know everything, right? So there are plenty of people that I see that are like, oh, this is easy. Everything's easy. They gloss over all of the challenge and all of the complexity because they think everything is easy because they're so smart. But they don't know what they don't know. And then the third is that person who has a fragile ego, high self-esteem, but very fragile. And so you can give them what's called an ego threat at all time, anytime, and they lash out and they're like the toxic leaders. So if you're not feeling the imposter syndrome, I think you fall into one of these three buckets. Maybe there's other buckets there, but it doesn't make for a good leader. So my thought is, and I see it with men now too, younger men, the older men don't seem to feel it, but younger men have come up to me and said, oh my God, that imposter syndrome part of the book was really resonant with me. Really? Because my age guys don't feel it. They don't know what we're talking about. But your age guys, they do. And so I think it has become actually a superpower rather than a hindrance if you can figure out how not to suffer from it.
Okay. And why do you think there's such a generational divide with imposter syndrome? Why do you think younger generation maybe tends to have it more?
It's a really good question. I don't know. I think there's just less distinction between men and women in your generation. I mean, there's still very big differences, don't get me wrong, and valid differences. But I think there's more introspection in your generation of men, right? They really think about their feelings more. They've been trained to think about their feelings more. They know that there are people around them and they're interacting. So I think that there is just more psychological awareness. And that psychological awareness gives you power, but it also gives you challenge, right? And so the challenge is the imposter syndrome, but the power is the imposter syndrome too. So it was really interesting to me, though, that was what I heard from young men. I've gone and given talks about the imposter syndrome, and I'm always wary when it's a group of men and women, but the men are the ones who are coming up to me going, oh my God, I feel this too. So it's really interesting to me that it's generationally different.
Wow. And speaking of psychology, you have a degree. You have your doctorate in psychology, which is amazing. Can you tell me about how you chose your degree in psychology, your doctorate in psychology, as opposed to law school, which is what your family tend to follow?
Everyone in my family went to law school. I knew I wasn't going to law school. Which is funny because I end up acting like a lawyer half the time, and really most of what I've done well and the unruly concepts come out of a legal framework or come out of a legal mindset, but I rebelled against law school, so I did not go. I went to a PhD program in psychology because I didn't want to wear a suit every day to work. Literally, that's why.
That's funny.
And I saw my professors, and none of them wore suits. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, this is great. I can be an academic. And I had, ended up defaulting. I had been in hard sciences for the first year and a half of college, defaulted into psychology because it was interesting and it was a fairly easy degree to, I'd taken a couple classes and it was fairly easy to fill in after I'd had all the hard sciences and knew I didn't want to do that to finalize my degree in psych. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to go to graduate school because I didn't want to go into consulting and I didn't want to go into the fields where I would have to, funny enough now, wear a suit. And then I got to graduate school and my advisor was like, you look like you're 12. You will be wearing a suit every time you teach. I was like, well, that didn't work very well. And I realized very soon after I got there that academia probably wasn't the right place for me. Mm-hmm. But I finished the PhD. It's been incredibly useful. I don't use it at all, and I use it every day. Mm-hmm. So I don't use it professionally in the context of an actual PhD in psychology, but man, psychology is incredibly useful for everything you do.
Life, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah. Do you think your psychology played a part in how you wrote the book?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is. I tried to make it more accessible than some of the PhD psychologist works that have lots of footnotes. I have no footnotes in the book. I tried to make it a little bit more accessible, but it is definitely there is a psychological research element to a lot of what I talk about there.
Yeah. And can you tell me a little bit about your leadership style and how it's developed from the beginning to now?
So I have really I've struggled with kind of how do you define this leadership style? Mm-hmm. And I was talking to another author who has a great book called Any Dumbass Can Do It. Loved the title. Love the guy who wrote it, Gary Ridge, an Aussie who ran WD-40. And we were talking about this, and his book and my book have some similarities. And I sum up my path generally in life, but also my leadership style as the rule that we have in our house with my kids. And sorry, I'm going to swear again, but it is don't be an asshole. Mm-hmm. There is so much that, yes, there are great things that you should think about in leadership in terms of, servant leadership and in terms of kind of inclusive leadership. There's a great book called Likeable Badass that Alison Fergale wrote for women and leadership. Phenomenal stuff that you can take from all of these different leadership philosophies and theories and, your path toward leadership. But it all boils down to, be a good person.
Yeah.
Right? Be open. Talk to people. Right? Treat them like human beings, not like underlings. The book Radical Candor, talk openly to them about what happened. When we sold the company, everyone told us, do not tell anyone until the day you close. That didn't feel comfortable to me.
Oh, any of your employees?
Any of your employees.
Oh, so they wouldn't find another job, meaning?
Yes, and that they wouldn't get spooked and that it would, if the deal fell through, it would be a problem, blah, blah. There are all sorts of good reasons not to tell them. My senior staff in particular, I wasn't comfortable going through this whole process without them knowing. And also, I needed them to be on board to tell the rest of the people when we did tell them and be totally comfortable with it and not be kind of deer in the headlights as they're finding out when everyone else is finding out. So we told them 6 months early. Mm-hmm. Everyone thought we were crazy. Again, that seems to be the theme.
Unheard of in government contracting.
It's unheard of in almost any business. Mm-hmm. And we didn't quite mean for it to be 6 months, but we did mean for it to be at least a couple of months. And it was crazy. And it was entirely the right decision because that's how we had led through the entirety of the firm. And it didn't feel comfortable to me to do anything differently than the way that we had led throughout. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. And you're a co-founder for some other organizations. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, we started In Gear Career, which was a nonprofit focused on military spouse employment at the professional level. So we realized fairly early on that we couldn't hire everyone that was a military spouse, although we wanted to, and we ended up being able to hire and retain a whole lot of military spouses over the years. But we started In Gear Career, which was the first nonprofit focused on military spouse employment at the professional levels. So there were plenty of kind of military spouse jobs, but they were telling people that they should be a dog walker and a bagger at the commissary and all of these perfectly fine jobs, but they weren't careers.
Yeah.
Right? And so we were the first ones to say, no. Military spouses actually are bringing stuff to the table that you don't understand. They're very highly educated, in fact, more highly educated than their civilian counterparts. And they're underemployed or unemployed consistently. And it's really hindering military readiness and retention. Because if the spouse isn't happy, right? Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
And it's all of these decisions are made around the kitchen table. So our greatest officers and NCOs were getting out because their spouses couldn't work. So we started an In-Gear Career. We ended up handing it off to Hiring Our Heroes years later, which was phenomenal to be able to give them this fully functional concept that they could then take and scale in ways that we just couldn't possibly do. While we were doing In-Gear Career, we started Homefront Rising, which was we called it at the time a boot camp for military spouses to get engaged in the political process in various different places, from running for office, and we've had lots of military spouses that have come through Homefront Rising actually run and win on both sides of the aisle, all the way up to, we have Jocelyn Benson as Secretary of State in Michigan running for governor. We have Nikki Haley, who spoke at one of our Homefront Risings, is a military spouse, governor of South Carolina, and then UN ambassador, and all of the things that she has done. So we did that. And then I feel like there was another one, and I can't remember. Which is terrible.
That's all right. I'll put it in the description.
I feel like there's another one. there's so much going on that and I've sat on a bunch of great boards for other people who have done some great work. So I'm sitting on the Secure Families Foundation board now, and Baycare and a bunch of others for stuff that somebody else had conceived of, but I'm very supportive of. So that has been wonderful as well.
That's amazing. That's great. And for the young women who are watching this podcast, and it's not just young women who watch this podcast, but all women and men as well, do you have any words of advice for them as far as they see that there's a need, that there's a gap in some sort of industry, and as you did with the needing a job and needing a career in Italy, and any advice on how to get that started?
You know what? Take one step. Look at what you think the possibilities are. I talk in the book about blue water versus red water versus black water. If you see something that is open, that you see a distinguisher in what you would do, so that you're not sitting in this really competitive space, if you see that, go look and make sure that it is something that indeed you can do, right? So know the rules, challenge the rules. But then take a step. You're not going to get it perfect. In fact, you're not going to get it right every time. But you take a step and then you evaluate, and then you take another step and you evaluate, and then you take another step and figure out where you're going. Don't jump off a cliff, right? Find your space that allows you what I call rational optimism, where you've mitigated some of the risks, and then jump and see what happens. But it's, excuse me, it's possible. And it's amazing when you get it right. But it's also amazing when you get it wrong, because then you learn from it and you pivot and you figure out the next thing.
Right, exactly. And you mentioned the importance of having that you have mentors in your life and that you've had it throughout your career. How can someone find a mentor? What if they have this idea, they're getting it started, but they want someone to help them as far as mentorship? Where could they look?
Mentors are really hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You've got, it's really hard to turn around and be like, will you be my mentor? Right? That doesn't work well.
Yeah.
And so when you reach out to somebody, I would never, first of all, come out to somebody and be like, hey, will you be my mentor? You've got to develop that relationship slowly over time. But if there is an idea that you have and there is someone that you've identified on LinkedIn or whatever that could be an interesting person to talk to, reach out to them and say, hey, I'd love 10 minutes of your time. Here's my general idea. And I'm really you strike me as someone who might have some thoughts about this. I would love just 10 minutes for you to kind of poke holes at what I'm thinking or you to guide me a little bit here and there. I know you're totally busy. I know that you don't probably have time for all of this. Here's the ask I'm making, and it's a small ask, right? And it's a specific ask so that you're not, can I pick your brain? Please don't ever ask somebody to pick their brain because I'm like, oh, that's going to be a 45-minute conversation that meanders and doesn't, right? So it is, hey, I've identified you for this specific reason. I'm doing this specific thing, and I'd love to ask you about this. And see where it goes, right? You're going to do a whole lot of those conversations before you get to somebody who will be kind of part of your kitchen cabinet, as I call it. But you need a lot of those relationships, and some of them will be a 10-minute conversation and it'll be useful and you'll never have another conversation with them. Some will be a 10-minute conversation that stretches into 2 hours because they're like, yeah, I'll cancel my next meetings because you're cool and I want to keep talking about this because this is awesome. And some of them will be something in between. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're coming to the end of the episode, but I really want to ask about this last thing.
Yeah.
In your book, you talk about the importance of community and finding your people.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
I will tell you that is, if anyone asks me what my biggest piece of advice is, it is find your village. And truly, my belief is that you have to find a unconditionally supportive village of the people who will support you when you are successful. And there's a whole lot of people who will do that, right? And also support you when you're curled up in a ball, crying, everything has fallen apart. And those often tend to be two different people, right? There are plenty of people who are like, oh, hey, I'm happy to see you down and out because I feel better about myself. But when you succeed, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Right? Or the people who are perfectly willing to ride your coattails when you're successful, but aren't there when you
need them.
Right. When everything falls apart, that's what you need. So you're fully unconditionally supportive village, and then you pick from them as you need specific things. But, some of them are your parent, people who have kids that are similar ages, and you can go to them totally openly and be like, I really don't like my kid right now. How do I do this? Right? Because they're really upsetting me right now. Or, the kind of senior graybeard, as we call them in the military, who can help you guide through, this challenge that you have at work or whatever. So, but you pick from that broader village who you need, but they have to be unconditionally supportive. And again, ruthlessly curate that village the same way you ruthlessly curate your priorities.
Yeah, I love that. Well, on that note, there was so much awesome information in this podcast. This is a really fun episode, Lauren. Thank you again so much for taking the time and speaking with me and answering.
It was
some
great
questions.
to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks all of you for watching. Give us a like, follow. I'm really trying to get some media traction, so if you could go ahead and do that, that would really help out the podcast so I can keep doing interviews and producing more content like this. So, all right, that's it.
That was great.